If you start from the wrong question, even perfect execution is a waste of time. That's how we build beautiful failures. We chase speed because it's measurable, but direction because it's hard. Momentum isn't about moving faster, it's about moving with purpose. True speed is consistency in the right direction, not chaos in every direction. Most startups die, not because they move too slow, but because they move too fast in the wrong direction. We confuse busy with effective and speed with success. That's why so many teams burn out before we even break even. Motion is addictive. Momentum is disciplined. I'm Josh, I'm a software developer and founder, and in the last year, I ran my own software startup that made $500,000 profit in the first month, and a year later, our doors are closed. I want to take you through the 2 reasons why most startups fail so that you can be successful and yours doesn't suffer the same fate. To give a bit of context, I ran a trading startup, a platform with trading bots on them, and we had a couple of clients use them that we were able to trade by connecting their crypto exchange API keys to it and using the bots that we built. It did pretty well initially. In the first month, there was about $500,000 in profit generated amongst about 20 clients, and we had almost $4.5 million in assets under management that were trading through our bots, that was trading through our platform. In December of 2024, we were responsible for 20% of Solana's daily trade volume on Bybit. And at that time, we thought we were destined for greatness. We were already planning how we're going to sell this business for hundreds of millions of dollars by the end of the year. And now that I'm here, almost at the end of the year, I find myself downscaling again, not upgrading. And as I do almost every year, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Let's just get to it. So the first thing that most startups get wrong is they focus on the solution, not the problem. They really believe they're focusing on the problem. They believe they're solving a core problem. But they find after months and months of development or going through certain processes to get to their customer, to get to markets and solve problems for their customers, they found out that they haven't quite hit product market fit, which means you're not solving the problem for the customer. They might find it difficult to market and bring a lot more users into the platform, which is lead generation. Or they might be great at lead generation and they find that they actually just have a leaky bucket, that their conversion rates aren't great. So it doesn't matter how many people they send to the platform, they're not going to convert that many of them. And really they should be focusing on optimizing the funnel. But almost everyone keeps prioritizing on the solution. They keep saying, we need to build this was in the pitch deck, this is what we promised. And they don't listen to the data. They don't listen to when customers come back to them and say, I love what you're doing, but this is the one thing I really need. Or this is how I'm actually using your product. Most of the time, the focus is on adding more and doing more, not on what value are the users actually getting out of this and how are they actually using the app, how are they actually using our services and how they're actually using our product. The focus is on increasing lifetime value, but not understanding what is the value that users actually perceive when using our product. The initial success in our startup, I do believe, was because we focused on the problem, not the solution. We knew we wanted to build trading bots. We knew our customer segment that we were building it for were people that had some kind of crypto holdings, that were holding long term. They were high net worth individuals, and they weren't focused on the day-to-day needing to go and trade in and out of cryptocurrencies. We knew that the users we were after had a long-term outlook, and they were focused on time in the market, not timing the market. We wanted to give them an easy way to manage their funds and move it around accounts between various exchanges, and we wanted to help them understand the risk and leverage that they currently had across the assets they were trading. We built a trading bot that did really well. We had a platform that gave fund managers the ability to move funds around as they needed, and as any traders know, in January the market turned around. And that is when I think we stopped focusing on the problem and started focusing more on the solution. See, I call it the panic. When the market turned, we incurred some losses, and the emotions that we all had internally were just not managed well. This led to a bunch of internal conflict and resulted in the quality of decisions that we made degrading. It ended up with just pure panic. You see, when we were focusing on the problem, we knew that the bots worked well. We knew where the risks were. We knew it wasn't a set and forget strategy. You still had to understand where the market was going in terms of the direction, but you were able to turn it around. If you saw we were in a bear market, you can set a short bot. If you know we're in a bull market, we can set a long bot. But if you're between those ranges and the price is just ranging and you choose the wrong direction or your thesis on trading is wrong, you can still lose money. It is not a guaranteed money printer. If you buy at the top of a range or at the top of the market and it just trades down, you will incur some losses. But the clients that had conviction to stick through it and carried on trading through the losses saw that it brought the average buy price down. They were holding a nice large position lower down, and as the price recovered, they made back both profits as well as the losses. And ultimately, the clients with conviction profited really well. But internally, our own bots had also lost a bit of money, and personally, we were panicking. Our focus kept shifting onto we need to build more bots, more strategies, because we couldn't build clients if they weren't making money. And we couldn't onboard new clients if our current clients weren't making money. We knew that if you just worked on timing some of the trends on a weekly or monthly basis, you could do pretty well. But if you still bought it at a local high or local low, you could lose out a lot of money. At that point, we just started investigating different ways to profitability. And we focused on different ways of billing, different type of bots we could offer. And ultimately, we were addressing all of the symptoms. We weren't addressing the root cause. The fact that actually managing the risk around that strategy was where our time should have been focused. Another thing we didn't do that well was testing. Yes, we went through quite a bit of testing initially, and any bot that we put out, we put our own money into, and lots of it, like tens of millions of rands. But again, it was not 100% automated. It still required some level of oversight. And if a market has gained 30, 40, 50% in value, take profit. Take some money off of the table. But at that point, we were focusing more on the solution, not the problem. And the second reason most startups die is due to speed or velocity. Now, speed or velocity here is not just being agile and delivering features as quickly as you can. It's not being the platform that's able to address the most problems. Almost everyone thinks they're agile because they have a daily stand-up where everyone says, this is what I'm doing today. And every 2 weeks they get together in a scrum session saying, this is what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks. But when they fail to deliver on a commitment month after month after month, they keep in the sunk cost fallacy. They keep going down that path and they don't course correct when they clearly should. Sometimes they've actually started execution too quick. They're still supposed to be thinking through and brainstorming and really refining their idea so that they can truly test the MVP, but they've started going along and building and executing on their grand vision, not testing the market first. Sometimes you'll hire someone and it's very clear that it's just not the right person for that role. You can spend a lot of time and effort upskilling them, giving them the best chance in that role, but it is still clear that somebody else would be a much better fit out the gate. It is very clear that their skill sets, their strengths and weaknesses are better applied somewhere else in the business, and sometimes in a different business. A lot of CEOs speak about firing fast, and it's not about being mean or harsh. It's about understanding that not every culture fits every personality. Not every person will work the same and gel well with everyone else. And you need to build a team that is well-oiled and can operate together. A team that has agency and authority. A team that is able to take accountability and ownership over what they need to do, but not that they need to be micromanaged or babied to actually go and execute on it. It's the only way you're going to scale. Now again, I think there's a bunch of stuff we got right and a bunch of stuff we got wrong. And I think where we really went right around speed and velocity is initially we were very focused on one or two very specific things. We actually had a potential client up front that we knew would be able to pay us and use the software. So we started off building a different version of the software for them. And then we basically spent the same amount of time and they never even logged into it. They never used it. It was a waste of time. We were able to catch it almost immediately, pivot and climb into the bots that we actually set out to do from the start. We made sure to identify who are the main users that would be interested in a bot like this. We weren't looking at offering a bot that created insane returns. We're not guaranteeing anything. We knew that we were only targeting people that were high net worth individuals that had disposable money sitting there already in crypto. They didn't have to be re-educated as to what are the risks, but they weren't necessarily focused on going and finding the next 100 or 1000x coin. They were happy for the long-term outlook to have their Bitcoin sitting there trading and just slowly accumulating. We knew we needed to validate the idea, so we built the bot and we put our own money in it and we tested it for a week or two. It worked exceptionally well. We benchmarked it against other influencers and bots they were running in public, and our initial results showed us that given the same parameters and money invested, our bots were outperforming other bots that we were benchmarking against. We validated that the product worked. We had been able to generate $500,000 profit across all of our clients within the first 35 days of building the software. We were profitable. We were able to identify early on where the bottlenecks were and what we really needed to focus maniacally on. We knew that our attention needed to be focused on understanding the direction of the market, so we knew when to turn on or off a long or a short position for this bot. And when we could see the writing on the wall, we did try to downscale. We reduced our resources. I went and found other work to try and not be as much of a financial burden on the business, but it's very clear where things went wrong. The main thing is that we let emotions take over. We didn't stick to the plan. We had made commitments to each other for certain things that would happen, and across the board, it just didn't hold up. Initially, we had discussed on potential outcomes if things didn't go according to plan, and none of those things materialized. And that points me to, we knew what would happen if things went well. We had our success criteria, but we didn't have our failure criteria mapped out. Part of speed and velocity is knowing how to measure what you're doing. It's knowing when is this measured as a success versus when do we cut our losses and say, this is a failure, let's move on to the next thing. And arguably, the failure part is more important. Knowing where to cut your losses is far more important than when things go well. Because when things go well, it can keep going well. When things go wrong, you need to keep funding it. When things go wrong, you bleed out. And then it it basically ended up in a culture where almost every week was a different focus. Whenever we were meant to be focusing on a certain task, there were fires to fight everywhere else, and we were then in a state of confusing motion for momentum. It was all focused on getting the new thing out, getting 60% of the way there, not quite enough to launch it, not quite enough to really even validate it, before we climbed into the next idea. This was also around massive hype around AI, and my partners in the business kept coming to me with posts off Twitter where they find some solo entrepreneur spent a weekend vibe coding an app and made $1 million. And there wasn't really the understanding or acceptance that there are limitations to it. There was just the attitude of, well, if these guys can do it, why can't you? And they fell into the trap of trying to use AI for almost everything. Let me tell you, there are ways to use it well, but it's not just AI. It is 100% possible to use any tool wrong. Ultimately, it showed that the team just wasn't aligned. And more than just not being aligned, it showed that it was the wrong team. We didn't gel well together. We didn't work well together. It created an environment where things became toxic. There were power dynamics at play, and it was really difficult to try and hold anyone in the business accountable to any of the input or commitments they made, or the expectations of their delivery, or even down what is a fair way to manage the risk. I've spent almost a decade pretty much focused on startups, and almost everything and almost all of the projects that have gone wrong, these are the main two factors. Almost everything can fall under one of these categories. Either you're really far down the sunk cost fallacy and you're focusing on the solution, not the problem, or you're not course correcting on time. You're not accepting reality that certain things happen certain ways, and that for you to get the outcome you want, people aren't just going to fall in line, that something needs to change. Something needs to happen to be the catalyst for that change. And it's not going to change just because you said so. There's a saying that I like, that how you do anything is how you do everything. And a lot of people have said that to disagree with me. Why I believe that it's true is because how you do everything speaks to your micro habits. It speaks to how you follow through on tasks. Are you just going to walk away? Are you going to dig your heels in and just be stubborn? Or are you going to try and compromise and find the right way forward? And I don't think it's 100% in either of those categories. I don't think anyone should ever be 100% in either of those categories. It is a give and take. There is compromise in business. I do believe you need to stand your ground and you need to advocate for yourself, make sure you get some of the upside and some of the value that you create. But at the same time, I do think it's fine to acknowledge that some companies do take advantage. In fact, most companies take advantage. I do think it's fine to accept and acknowledge your worth. And if the offer is below your walkaway point, you're not a bad person for sticking by your standards or boundaries. In fact, I've actually earned more work out of declining work and being straight and telling them I wouldn't do it for that because it's not worth it to me. Yes, they can go find another developer that will do it for that amount, and I can almost guarantee that they would need to do that 4 or 5 times to get it right, because I can see they're going to run into certain problems that need to be solved, and those are expensive problems to solve. So solve those first, because if you can't get over those, you're likely not going to be able to deliver in the long run. So rather figure that out in the first month or 2 than a year down the line. And if they're not willing to experiment and play around with that, and they solely focus on the solution, not the problem, you can tell which way it's going to go. But then again, it also comes with some humility. You have to also acknowledge that you don't know everything. You have to realize that every project is different. Every business has their own nuances in how they do things and what is actually really important to them. There are different stages of building a business that have different requirements. The definition of done or the definition of okay for now is different if you're a startup with 2 people versus a startup with 30 people versus a company at 1,000 people. It means something completely different to get something done and out there and tested in someone's hands as an MVP than it is as a fully fledged product. But that doesn't mean you're just putting out garbage all the time. You still need to put out quality and take pride in your work. But those different stages have different acceptance criteria. Those different stages have different nuances of what is acceptable or not. And unless you keep coming back to the principles of focusing on the problem, not the solution, and speed and velocity over just being busy, from everything I've seen, that is the only way to make sure you will have a successful startup in whatever you're trying to do. You really just need to survive long enough and listen to the data, because users will pay for value. If they feel they're getting the value, they will pay you and you can continue. And that is called product market fit. I want to hear from you in the comments down below. When last have you run into motion over momentum? Are you currently dealing with motion over momentum in your current work environment? If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Please let me know if you like this kind of content, if you want to go more in depth into these kind of projects. And I want to hear from you. What are you building? What problems are you facing? And what are some of the creative ways you've managed to get around them and make progress? At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. When one door closes, another opens, and all you need to make sure is that you just keep moving forward. That's it from me. Cheers.